I'm Carrie.
I'm Toni, and we are
Two Cranky Creatives.
This podcast is brought to you by the Graphics Gang, our online community you can find at patreon.com/graphics gang. Paid members can also watch many of the unedited podcast video recordings.
Hi, we are with Stacie Dale today. So Stacie, tell us, what are we cranky about today?
I am cranky about a lot of designers coming to me and asking me for a shortcut of how to get paid and get a job in this industry, and thinking that it's really easy, and it is not. Very hard.
Yes, very much so. Excellent. So we definitely want to dive into the fact that this is not a get-rich-quick scheme at all. But before we do, let's give you a chance to introduce yourself to our listeners. So tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got into the surface design game.
Sure. My name is Stacie Dale, and I am the editor of Surface Design News. I went to college for fashion design, and I worked in that industry for about 10 years. And then I started my own company doing hand-painted keepsake chests. And at the same time, I did a little bit of licensing with children's wall art. Some of it was good and some of it was bad. But, I did that for like 27 years. And I have a lot of friends that are still in the apparel industry, and I keep in contact with them. I kind of know what's going on most of the time. But, during, I guess it was before the pandemic, I was sort of toying around with the idea of doing patterns again for fabric, because I hadn't done them in a long time. So I took a class online, like many of us do. And, I came out of that class feeling a little bit unsure, I think, of how to go about, getting into this business. And I felt there were some things lacking from the class, and that's not anything against the class. It's just, it was very focused on how to make patterns and not the business end of it. And I kind of knew the business end of it. So I felt like there was an opportunity for me to help other designers figure this out. And that is when I started Surface Design News, to find companies to work with and, to let other designers explain how they got into this business. So I also do portfolio reviews, which I love doing. I just try my best to give people some direction, because I think when you do come out of some of these big classes, you're a little unsure about where you're supposed to go next. So, so that's sort of, I still do Surface Design News. I'm also an illustrator. I'm illustrating a series of children's books right now, for an independent author, which is great. A lot of work, but it's good. So that's me.
And I want to go on record and say Surface Design News is incredibly informative. The list that you give out, the resources, because even, for a lot of us that are just getting started, like I remember thinking, where can I find somebody that does tea towels? You know what I'm saying? And then I got a Surface Design News that was like, hey, tea towels. So
I didn't really mention that part, that like in every newsletter, there's companies to pitch your work to, but there's also an entire list of resources for you. If you want to make tea towels, if you want to make t-shirts, if you want to make stickers. A lot of us have our hands in a lot of different things. Some of us pitch and have our own products. And so, I was glad to be able to do that. And I just kind of add to it whenever I find a new company that's, doing something that maybe somebody would want. So
Yeah.
No, I definitely love it.
I love Surface Design News too, because, even though I'm already actively pitching and I've been pitching for what seems like forever, I very often discover a company I had no idea who they were. I've never heard of them before. And lo and behold, they're looking for artists to license artwork from. So, and I, just getting that every month is like amazing. So and it's real actionable information. It's not pie in the sky stuff that's like, oh, you can do this. Well, how?
Right.
This is like, no, that not only can you do this, you can contact these exact people at this company.
People,
Right.
yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
do think there's a lot of that when you do come out of these classes. I think there are a lot of people who just don't know where to go next. And I mean, it's not an easy thing to do on your own. And I think communities like what you have, Surface Design News is kind of its own little community. Joining any of those, even like online Facebook groups that are focused on surface design, you can get a good amount of information from that. You know, but without somebody kind of directing you like where to go, you're just sort of floundering, and you know, it's tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think while you're figuring out like pitching and research and things like that, that it was a great resource. I forget how I got turned on to it, but I have loved it ever since I got it. So
Well,
thank you for
guys.
doing that for all of us.
Happy to do it.
But so in terms of what we're here to talk about today, there are what I think of as signature courses, signature programs. Some of them very, very popular that, you know, everybody knows, but we are going to go out of our way and bleep out if we have to. We're not naming names for anything today. We're not trying to cast aspersions on anybody. Because I think the bottom line in America is when you sell something, you're selling the best case scenario, right? So when we get marketing for courses, when we get marketing for these things, we're getting the best case scenario painted for us, but we're also getting what worked for them ultimately, right?
Right.
And that's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think where I get cranky, where I get particularly cranky, and I have taken quite a few courses, is the what I like to think of being as sold the dream, right? And one of the reasons we started this podcast is because not enough people are talking about like the ugly slog of it all. It's not a formula, right? And that I think gets lost, especially if you're a new surface designer, new pattern designer, whatever it might be. And you're coming into this thinking, you know, I want a roadmap. A map is a map, but it's not a formula. Like, you know, what it looks like for you is going to be really different.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I do think a lot of the designers that I've, you know, had the privilege of talking to and sort of helping them get through all of this, is that, you know, they really want to do it. Like they're excited about it. And that's wonderful to be excited about it. But then I think they also get a little deflated when they find out that it is not easy and that it's not this magic, like, oh, it's beautiful and wonderful for everybody. I mean, for most of us, the majority of us, I mean, it takes years to get a licensing deal. And even then, some people never get them. I mean, it's not easy. And I think when some of these classes are sold to you, it does sort of sell this dream and like, you know, everything's wonderful, everything's coming up roses and you can do it too. And yes, you can, but you're not going to be on that same path as anybody else. Like everybody's got their own journey and you're going to meet different people. You're going to find different companies. You may go into it thinking, I mean, I went into it thinking I wanted to do fabric design and I came out of it realizing like, no, I want to be an illustrator. Like I mean, I'm grateful for that. But at the same time, you know, these courses are expensive and, you know, people are really buying into them because they're buying into the dream of having this wonderful design career. And I think with the initiation of a lot of these classes, I mean, it's sort of exploded over the last couple of years. Like everybody's, you know, got a course, and the more people that are offering them, you know, you're getting a lot more people into the industry that weren't necessarily going to be there before. So it is very competitive.
Right.
So, you know, I feel bad for a lot of the designers that come out of these classes thinking, you know, I mean, I get a lot of portfolios. They're like, here's my portfolio. Who should I pitch to? And a lot of times I have to say, you are not ready. Like, not ready.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to kind of reel them back in and say, you know, design for the company you want to work with. Like, they're not going to change their aesthetic for you.
Right.
You have to design for them. And
Right.
that's something no one ever mentions in the class. It's always
Right.
about, you know, your personal style and, you know, you want, and that's great. You can do your personal style, but it's going to be harder to align with a company that maybe, you know, maybe nobody does your style. And that can be great, but it's also going to be harder. I mean,
Right.
it's just, I think, there's a lot more to learn than what
Yeah.
is being taught.
Right.
So,
You know, and to your point, you did a curated contacts for me. And
yes, I did.
you did, yes. And first of all, amazing, loved it.
Thank
But
you.
you did come back to me because I said, oh, because honestly, fabric was never really a focus for me because I'm like, I don't, you know, it's not.
Yeah.
I don't see my style that way. But I was like, let me ask Stacie what she thinks about me in the fabric world. And you were like, you're not presenting it correct, and you were very nice about it. I'm
Yeah, I'm
succinctly
never mean.
paraphrasing it. No, but you were like, you're not presenting it. You know, you need to do full collections, not mini. Like you just gave me like this, like boom, 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 very nice, polite, encouraging. You're not doing it right if you want to do fabric.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm so happy to be able to give people that information just because when I worked in the apparel industry, like I saw portfolios come in and, you know, we saw people that, you know, the more background you had in apparel and like how it's constructed and how things are actually manufactured, you know, the better because you were designing in a way that understood that.
Right.
And not just, you know, here's my design. So I think it's important for, you know, other people to get that other side.
Yeah.
And, you know, I love doing portfolio reviews just because, you know, I kind of know like right away, you know, I mean, I have a lot of people who literally have just finished a class and they contact me and they are like, you know, here's my portfolio. Who should I pitch? And like, no one yet. Like, you need to like, you know, you have to find your own. If your artwork looks like everybody else's, that can be a problem. You know, companies are looking for special and new.
Right.
And that's not to say it can't be vector artwork. You can make vector artwork look new, but if you're doing stuff that you just learned in class, you know, I think it's like that for any class, even in college. It takes you a couple years to really put into practice, you know, what you learned and gain some traction from that. You know, nobody comes out of any class thinking, you know, oh, give me $1 million, you know, like, there's a specific way to go about it. And just like anything else, you know, surface pattern design is the same way. It is steps and not just, I made a portfolio and I'm going to throw. I think too, some people think that I get a little bit of a controversy with this because I always say you should design to the companies that you want to pitch to. And I have a lot of people say, well, I want to do stationery and I want to do fabric design. I also want to do wall. And that's great. But I never think it's a good idea to send an art director a portfolio that if they're a fabric company, they just want to see fabric. And if you're sending them other things, to them, it sort of says like, oh, you don't really want to be here. And two, you don't understand our customer.
Right.
So if they're already thinking that about your portfolio, it's just going to knock you down the ladder. So, you know, I do feel like in some of the classes, they do sort of make it seem like you can do all these things. There are very few people who do every single aspect of surface design. And usually they have started with one and it just gradually grows to something, you know, but nobody comes into it doing wall art, stationery, fabric, puzzle. That's not how this works. So that's another issue.
I think the thing that kills me, and I've heard this, I've taken 3 of the 4 big classes. The thing that kills me in all of them is when somebody says, start before you're ready. Like, just do it.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. No.
You know,
I mean, you can, but you're going to be disappointed. And that is dangerous because then you're going to think that it's your art. And, you know, it may be your art, but it may just be that you just need to practice it a little more. It's not that it's bad. You just need to practice, you know, the tools and techniques a little bit more. But Yeah.
But also you're going to get better, right? Like, so
Yeah.
this last year, I decided to stop pitching, not forever, but just because my freelance practice was taking up too much of my time. So I said, I'm not going to pitch, but what I am going to do is I'm going to go back through all of my early work and see with what I know now, what can I do with this?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, because I have a whole different way of designing now. And it's been like really cool for me to be like, oh, this pattern that I really liked. And now I'm kind of like, oh, but like, I'm like, okay, how would I do this now? But with like the same basic, foundation, and it's been really cool. I've had a lot of fun just doing that. And I don't think people do that enough, truthfully.
I agree. I think people are just fed this, like you can do anything, and you can, but you have to, like I said, there are steps to doing it. It's just, you can't go right in with your first design and expect to get a licensing deal. Does that happen? Every once in a while,
once in a while,
but it is not the norm.
it reminds me of oh God, I'm trying to remember if it was like Weight Watchers or like you used to watch those commercials and they'd be like, she lost 60 pounds in 40 days, and then they'd have the little disclaimer like results not normal or
not typical.
Results not typical. Yes,
that's
results not typical.
Yeah.
Yes,
maybe we need that on some things, like results not
like,
typical.
Yeah.
These classes, they have the guest experts, they come on and you hear their stories, but they're not saying it took me 12 years to get my, to do this, or the thing that would frustrate me is it'd be like, okay, like I've got this Etsy and it's doing this and I've got this. And I started in 2006.
Right.
So, and I'm like, okay, that's great, but that's not, you didn't start in 22. Like, you know what I'm saying?
No.
So like your experience is great, but it was a completely different landscape. Right. And I think that gets lost.
I agree with that 100%, because there are people, I think now, like if that same person tried to do it now, like right up, it wouldn't happen for them. Like 10, 15 years ago, this industry was not nowhere near as saturated as it is now.
Yeah.
So to have those people on and tell their, magnificent story, like, no one ever stresses that, like, but this took me years. It is not something that happened like right away. So
exactly.
It's
exactly.
I think I think the one thing too that I hear from your frustration, Stacie, and I will add to, I guess, is I think these classes and just the ideas that they give you, I mean, they're good foundational ideas and they're
100%.
good mindset, they're good for, helping with your mindset and helping you, kind of come up with a basic framework. But it's not even just that there are steps to doing this. A lot of it is just putting in a lot of time. I have hit hundreds and hundreds of companies. And I get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of unread emails.
Yeah.
I don't even mean like they read it and they don't respond. I mean,
they just don't read it at all.
Email. Yeah. But I just get back in there and send 10 more emails or however many I need to send. And I've dedicated hundreds of hours of my time to pitching. So it's not like, and yes, it's doable, but it's not like you're going to pitch 10 people. You can, and then have one of them say yes, that it's possible, but it's not likely. Not everyone who picks up a guitar is Mick Jagger. That doesn't mean that you're not going to be, Mick Jagger level at some point, but you've got to dedicate the time to getting yourself out there too, which is unfortunately not fun marketing, but it has to happen.
Right.
Yeah. And like what Toni, when you said, like, I practiced, like I took a whole year just to practice, like that is the best thing anybody can do, is to practice. I still am getting better, and I've been drawing my entire life. And yet every time I draw, I feel like, that's better than the last one.
Yeah.
So there's never really, I mean, the ceiling is very high to where you can get to with your artwork. Like you shouldn't just settle for, this is what I got.
Right.
Like, always keep learning, always keep practicing, because that is, art directors see that. They see that you've put the time in and
Right.
that you've researched their company and you know what they make and that you understand how they market their product. Like all of those things coming together is what's going to give you some success. When you had just little pieces of it and not the rest of it, you're going to spin your wheels for a long time.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing and that's something I'm learning too as I've gone, because I really started attempting to get into licensing in 2022. But so, and that was like taking the courses and then trying to figure out pitching and all that other stuff and why did I completely lose my train of thought? Never mind.
That's
We'll
okay.
come
We're old now.
right. Yeah, I lost that train of thought.
Well, you're talking about pitching in 2022.
Nope, that's
No,
not
it didn't help at all. It's okay. That's cool. I do it too.
Oh, getting better. I think
Yes.
it's about something along the lines of getting better. Yeah, like so every time I go back and I take more things, and I learn different things, and then I come back and I revisit something. And some things I'm like, oh, that was great. I really hit it out of the park. And the other things I'm like, oh no, like I really could have done that differently. And then also too recently where it's like I've had clients come back for something like, can you recolor it? And then I go back and I look at the way I construct it and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to redraw it, And I'm saying,
vector art. Excuse me.
Anyway, Carrie, we're not talking about that.
Yeah, you know vector art.
It's really easy to recolor.
It is.
When you use layers with non-vector art, it's easy to recolor too. But
yeah, that's true. That is true.
It's just like how I actually constructed it was bad, but and truthfully, that was not the point I was going to make either, but that we went with that one. So that's okay. If it comes back to me, we'll figure it out. So,
well,
but,
and I'm going to actually tell you that you are wrong. I doubt it was bad. I doubt that you constructed it badly, Toni. It's if you had painted a painting, you wouldn't have layers that you could pull. True. You know what I mean? Like that's the way fine art works.
That's true.
And Procreate operates like fine art. So, there's nothing wrong with being like, I can't recolor that without you giving me a lot of time. And if you feel like uncomfortable saying that to someone or afraid to say that to someone, you can be like, well, would you ask Pablo Picasso to repaint? Now, you're not comparing yourself to Pablo Picasso. I'm just saying, would you ask him to take one of his paintings and paint over top of it different colors? No.
Right.
And I'm not saying, you're like, oh, I'm Pablo Picasso.
No, I would
think that about myself, but you deserve that level of respect as an artist.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. I doubt you constructed it badly. It's just not a vector file. And not everyone works in vectors. I'm aware of that. So
yeah, I definitely don't. I don't.
Well, I think too, because there's so many different sectors of surface design. Like if you're into fine art, and you want to do wall art, you're not going to be doing vectors probably. You're going to be doing fine art and you're going to be either having them scan it or you're going to have it professionally photographed or scanned. It's a completely different process than, making a repeating pattern for fabric. They're just completely different things. So, yeah, I think it's hard sometimes for people who either just do vectors to do like raster art and vice versa. I thought I would love doing vector and Illustrator, and I did not like it at all. It just
I tried.
I didn't feel enough hands-on. Like I wanted, I felt like I was gonna have to lose some of what I wanted to put into it. And so it just wasn't for me. That's not but I'm amazed at some of the vector art that's out there. Carrie, I love that cat.
I know. Carrie's cats are amazing.
Oh, do you mean my reach for the stars? Because I want to tell you, guess what? I made that in Procreate. That's not a vector.
I feel validated.
Oh, good. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and
I love that.
Speaking of kind of what you were saying earlier, Stacie, so I came at this as a graphic designer who did a lot of logos. And I've been using computers for a long, long time, and I've always been comfortable with computers. And I just started out on Adobe Illustrator. And I kind of cut my teeth on Illustrator in the professional world as a graphic designer. I did a lot, like I said, I did a lot of logos. And it was a hard transition for me. I kind of was kicking and screaming, dragging myself to Procreate, because my first thought was, what if someone wants this bigger? What the heck am I going to do? And you can only make it so big in Procreate. Now, if you do a painting or whatever, you can scan it at a higher resolution. But I've been switching over to textured art recently, using Procreate for a lot, including Reach for the Stars, because I know that that's what my art licensing clients want. And that's what I had, I know that as somebody who's been around, but not everyone knows. I had to switch my MO of the software that I use if I want to get my art licensed. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, I love doing vectors, but they don't get licensed as often. So I'm just going to drag myself over to Procreate and, and it's fun. I mean, I enjoy it. It's just frustrating sometimes.
I remembered my point.
Okay, good. Good.
And it kind of ties into what you're talking about too, Carrie. So trends. Things, because we were talking about people having their styles and maybe the style isn't working with what's going in the marketplace or whatever. And so when I first hit the scene, everything was, it still is, but it's shifting a little bit. Pastels, neutrals, nudes, all of this other stuff. And like my work has never been like that. But now 2 years later, and I've spent a lot of time kind of just working on like my art and stuff like that. All of a sudden we're talking about like bold stripes and maximalism and things like that. And I think that one of the things that our new surface designers aren't really being told is you may not fit right now, but hang in there, because things, that trend is going to, like I still have only sold stripes on Spoonflower. Like my stripes are selling like crazy, but I'm like, okay, you know what I'm saying? But like, I'm wondering, like with the trend towards maximalism, which is where my work leans more than anything else, like, am I going to start, is it going to be my year, kind of thing.
Yeah. I think there's people who are they only design for trends. And I think that's not a great way to approach it. I think you should have some of your own ideas, I guess. And, you want to show them something fresh and new. And I think by the time we see trends, unless you're following the trend reports, that's another thing. Some of the classes say, oh, go to the store and, look and see what's there. And it's already there.
It's already there. Exactly.
And if that is not something you want to like if they have turtles, you probably don't want to do turtles. It's already out there. It's already in the market, unless you can do it in some completely different way.
Right.
But I do think people get very hung up on trends and they feel like that's all they should be designing. And I just don't agree with that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it serves you well to just look at trends and say, this is what I'm going to design. It's not, may just not be genuine to you. You may not like that trend. And so why would you want to make art?
And it's going to be short-lived. That's the thing too, is, okay, so you have a trend, you design for a trend and it gets picked up. That's great. But you don't know if that's going to be earning income for the company you licensed it with next year or 2 years from now.
Right.
So, and it's a guessing game anyway, but yeah.
And the thing, sorry, Stacie, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Toni. Go ahead.
I think another thing that doesn't come out, especially if we think about this whole idea of like being sold this magic career, right? That a lot of people don't talk about is your royalties are still dependent on sales. So you got licensed, but what if it doesn't sell?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and it's just, everyone's just thinking about getting the deal. Okay, you got the deal, but they still have to sell. And if it doesn't sell, especially if it's a trend and it's a new trend that's coming out and nobody, okay, it's a trend, but maybe they don't want your, whatever, glittery turtle tea towel, then you're not getting the royalties.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue where I think people that come into this, I think, are sold this idea that, you get paid right away. And that's why in all of the directories I have, I explain, like, here's the life cycle of a print. It's an entire year before you actually start seeing any money come in. You have to be okay, you gotta have some other income for that entire year if you're just
Right.
starting out. You know, and I know it's exciting when people get licensed, but you're right. Like, if it doesn't sell, you know, it's not a win.
Right.
You
Like,
know,
yeah,
and that
it's not.
company may, if it doesn't sell for that company, they may not ever come back to you because they'll be like,
Mm-mm.
hers didn't sell, you know, we're done. So, you know, there's a lot of factors that you can't really control in this game.
Mhm.
And you have to be okay
Right.
with that going into it. You have to know that going into it, that it's not, I mean,
Right.
the artwork might be, I've seen some beautiful artwork from some of the portfolios. I mean, gorgeous stuff. And
Mhm.
yet these people don't have any licensing deals. And it's not really because the artwork isn't good. It's just there's not a whole lot of companies that specifically use that type of artwork that are looking to license. That's another thing that people don't understand. They think every company that has artwork on products, you know, that's one of the things they tell you in the class. Right? There's thousands of companies, you know, that put artwork on products. That's true, but a lot of them have in-house designers. They
Yes.
don't license. Or if
Yeah.
they do, it's a very small portion of their company. So when people say, you know, I think when people hear that, they think that's why there's so much opportunity. There's thousands of companies. But what they don't tell you is that maybe 20% of those actually license artwork.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little, there's just things that get left out. And whether it's on purpose or not, I don't know. But there's just something about that, you know, when you're not
Mhm.
giving somebody the entire picture of
Right.
what to expect,
Right.
it feels defeating, like afterwards.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, it really does.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, for artists, that's like the worst thing ever.
Right.
We don't need any more defeats. We get a lot of them. Like, you get no
Right.
all day long, but you know,
Yeah.
when your hopes are built up and you think, oh, this is the thing, and you come out of it and you're like, why isn't this working? You know, it's
Mhm.
because nobody told you this whole other half of it that, you know, you need to know.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the
Well,
frustration, I think.
yeah, I mean, it's like in writing, you write the book and then you sell the book, and then but nobody talks to you about what it's like once you sell the book. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And like you've
Yeah.
got, much like with licensing, you've got an entire year before it's going to hit the market. Then you got to think about royalties. Don't even get started on the way they do their accounting. You know, like just all like nobody's talking because the class, and I think the thing that I want our audience to understand, these classes, so I have a Bruce Lee approach to my life. Everybody knows Bruce Lee, the martial artist. Most people don't know he was also a philosopher. He wrote many, many books about the philosophies that he lived his life by. And so the quote that I take from him and I live my life by is: research your experience, absorb what's useful, discard what's useless, and add what's uniquely your own. And so I have, with every class I take, with everything I do, I attempt to take that approach. And these classes are valuable. They give you good information. They give you great starting points. They do a lot for you. But what they don't give you is the entire picture, right?
Yeah.
And what I think not enough, and of course they're not going to do it because then it's like people might not, because I will tell you, I write reviews. I write a lot of reviews of the big class. Like every class I take gets a review. Not every Skillshare class I take gets a review, but like the big self-hosted classes, if I take it,
That's
it gets
mine.
a review. That's yours, Carrie. I got a couple others coming out too, but I did review Carrie's. Because it was about Spoonflower. That's why. Because with Spoonflower being such a thing. But the reason for that is because Skillshare, I mean, there's a lot of like, I don't want to trash. Like if I have a policy, if I'm going to be really negative, I try not to put it up. But so my point with all of that was, and I went and lost my train of thought again.
You were talking about your reviews and discarding what you don't need.
Oh, right. So like they're trying to get you to take the class. Like, and if they start saying like all these other things, they're not, you know, they might lose people. So I write these reviews and people ask me questions offline. So many questions, you know, about the courses that I've taken and that I review. And I always have to tell them, like, you got to understand you're going to get some good information, but it's what you do with the information that matters. Like, because it's like like, okay, so I'm Southern. We grew up with Southern banana pudding, the kind that's got like the vanilla wafers in it. You know what I'm saying? Like some people love it and some people think it sucks, right? So like you put two people in front and some people go like, that's gross. And other ones like, oh my God, this is the best stuff ever. Same concept, like with these classes, right? So like it's what you do with it that matters. But the thing that I think gets lost is the person putting out that class, and with the big ones, I think they got 7-figure incomes coming in, but the majority of their income is not coming in from art licensing. It's coming in from that class they just sold you.
Yeah.
Right. And so like balance that out. Like, and I'm not saying they're on the take or that they're conning you or anything. I'm not saying that at all. There's so much good information in these classes. But what they're not then like if they were like, okay, I'm gonna like who's gonna pay $2,000 for a class that's like, and here's the slog for afterwards?
Yeah.
Nobody. Nobody.
Yeah, I mean, if you're selling something, you have to sell it to make money. And I get that is it's a tactic. I mean, even like the FOMO thing, fear of missing out, that's another sales tactic that a lot of people use just to get people to buy their product or buy their class. That's just the way the world is. But I think for people maybe like us who had some design background beforehand or some, like, I think we kind of knew going into it. But if you're somebody that was starting with no background in art and didn't understand how this business worked, and you took that class and thought that was the only thing you needed to know, and then once class is over, you're sort of like perplexed why nothing's happening for you. That's the disappointing part, I think, is that there's such a variety of people taking these classes. There's people who have lots of experience and there's people with no experience, and you're all getting the same class. You're all getting the same information. So, there are people like us who know what to do with that information. But if you are brand new and you're just starting out as an artist, like, I wouldn't know what to do.
Right.
I would be very frustrated.
Right.
So, and I agree. Like they are making their money off the class. They are not making money off of licensing. I mean, if you look at any of them and their actual licensing deals, like do the math. There is no way that they are making millions of dollars licensing quilt fabric. It's just not. That is not reality. They are making most of their money, selling classes. Like you said, they are good classes. I think they have great information. But there is some lack of information that just needs to be addressed. Right. And there's no one really addressing it in the class.
Right.
Except for us, right?
Except for us. I'm trying.
Which is why, Stacie, this is, first of all, when I was thinking about doing this podcast, you were my first idea for a guest.
Aww.
Because of things that you and I have talked about offline. Yeah. And when Toni and I were kind of fleshing it out, we were talking about exactly this subject, because there isn't enough. We're not here to be negative Nancy's or to dash anyone's dreams against the rocks or anything like that. But there needs to be, I guess, a bit of a balance on the other side of reality. Right. And it's not impossible. I mean, I am sitting here as a licensed artist telling you this, but I was willing to put in hundreds of hours worth of work to get there. Right. And to put a lot of pieces together that I got from multiple places. Right. Including one of those big classes. But yeah, so, I am glad that you came on, because we definitely this needs to be said, and people need to hear it. And it's not to tell anyone to give up. Absolutely not.
No,
right. This is the opposite.
I want people to be a dream squatter.
Just work hard. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, there's more to it than the class. There's a lot more to it. And if you don't learn that other part of it, you are going to struggle. It's going to be much harder. And, this is not to say everybody's going to get a licensing deal, because they're not. Right. Not everyone is cut out for this. And I also think, too, there are some people who think that this has to be their full-time job. I know lots of people, lots of my artist friends like work other places. They work at museums, they work at grocery stores. I mean,
Yeah.
they do
I have
other,
a friend.
yeah, like they do other things to make money.
Mhm.
And this is their, this is the art practice that they do in their spare time or
Right.
part time. So I don't want people to feel like, I know there's a lot of people who feel embarrassed, like that they have to have another job. And I'm like, too many
No.
times I had other jobs when I was even when I worked full time in the apparel industry, I had another job.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it doesn't always pay what you need it to pay. And
Right.
so I don't want people to count on licensing as this income. And like you said, it's cyclical. Like it doesn't necessarily mean just because you got one license deal that you're going to keep going. There's
Right.
going to be dry spells.
Right.
Yeah.
There's going to be many
Exactly.
dry spells.
Exactly. And I've said, and Carrie knows this, I make a conscious decision to stay full-time employed because
Right.
in my freelance practice, I don't market myself, so it's all referral based. And I want to be able to say no. I don't
Yeah.
want to have to take any person that walks through my door because I got to pay the bills. But I will say I also like I facilitate art mentorship programs and art leadership programs. And like I do that specifically. So like I can say now for the first time, my art practice is fully funded, right? Like where I'm not paying for it out of my salary at all. Right. Yay. Right. Like, hey, but I'm doing that because I do it for the community. I do it for the community of artists that I'm around and the networking and things like that. And we call it portfolio careers, right? So you have a portfolio career, but like Carrie, because you're licensing, you're teaching, that's a portfolio career. Right. And so like, I think, and especially if you get Shannon McNabb's survey results every year.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I love. They're so insightful.
Yeah.
Insightful.
Mad respect for that. Like all you got to
Fantastic.
do is look at the breakdown of how much money people are making. I'm like, okay, if you want to compare yourself to like, quite frankly, like if you were a cashier at McDonald's, like that's what the average
pay
surface designer is making. Like you can make the same at McDonald's. Well, at least where they pay you $15 an hour, not in Kansas, that's for sure. But our minimum wage is still $7. Like, okay.
Hello, I'm also in Georgia. Same thing.
Pennsylvania, it's still almost $7.25. I mean, nobody pays that. Everybody pays like 15, but the fact that they haven't caught up to the fact that no one is paying $7.25 anymore. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I just feel like there's like I don't know why. I think artists are just somehow we're just supposed to be like embarrassed that we don't make this big full-time income like a lawyer or it's not our thing. And are there artists that make tons of money? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are there a lot of them? No.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of, I mean, I would say 98% of my artist friends are part-time artists and have jobs elsewhere. That's just the nature of being an artist. It's not a high-paying job. And I think when some of these classes are presented as an income that you can your spouse doesn't have to work anymore, and that you can do all these things and be home with your kids, and like that's not reality for most people. And so I just feel like that should be just a little more upfront that is and how you got to that point.
Right.
Like there are certain people teaching who they don't really tell you exactly how they got to that point, because I think they would have to reveal that I didn't get that to that point licensing. I got to that point teaching.
Right.
Yeah. Or
so,
I mean, to be fair, like I was inspired by, and I guess shout out to Stacie Bloomfield, but she is a big proponent of telling people to have multiple income streams.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time I ever heard anyone say that in one of those classes. I've always had like 10 jobs anyway, because I get bored really easily and I don't like sitting still. So, but I think that is what makes a lot of people successful. So, but yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to have products that you're selling, or sometimes you have to have teaching and coaching and products and communities and podcasts and licensing and all these different, and freelance. So, but that's different for everybody. And also not everybody has the energy or time to do that.
Exactly.
So you have to temper you have to set your expectations and then work towards what you want. But there is no magic quick fix. You're not going to wake up one day and become famous. My Reach for the Stars cat art has blown up. I mean, it's like my #1 bestseller in my Etsy shop. Every time anybody like reaches out to me, they're like, I saw your Reach for the Stars cat. I've made some money on it, I've made a bit, but it's not like, on Oprah's products or whatever, it's not, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. Oprah, if you're listening, you can put it on there. but like, even then, like, even if you have a product that does really well, like, you just have to think about, well, what is going to make you happy?
Right.
Maybe what this other person has that you're taking these classes from that makes them happy isn't what makes you happy anyway.
Right.
So
exactly.
Yeah. And I think you have to remember too, like, a lot of these people, I mean, they in the beginning had a spouse to bring in the other half of the money or most of the money until I did when I was married. Like, when I started my business, my ex-husband was like very supportive and, just let me run with it. But, once I got divorced, I was like, oh crap, I have to make all that money up somehow, some way, and pivot to something else, because that is, painting keepsake chests is not going to pay the bills. I mean, it pays a small part of them, not the big money. So there's a balancing act, and everybody's coming into it at different stages of their life.
Yes.
Not a lot of people who kind of buy into I can just sit home and draw all day. Most of them have somebody else helping them out, supporting them in some way. If you're single, like a young person just out of college, and you're coming into this and you're spending all this money on a class, it's scary. It's very scary to not have any other support. And so, I hate when, I think it's great that people explain, their situation, their family situation and all that. That's wonderful. And a lot of them do give credit to their spouse who was, helped support them along the way. But I don't know that's ever like a focal point. I don't know if there's enough emphasis put on, the different types of people coming into these classes and the broad spectrum of people who are taking these classes. It's not a one size fits all, and it's sort of sold that way. And that, I think, is the difficult part about it, is that it's not a good fit for everybody. It's just not.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that is it's not a great fit for everybody. So I think that's a great place to kind of like cap that particular conversation. But I do want us to say kind of like, so what are we recommending people do, right? We are saying, go into it with your eyes open, right? These classes are valuable, take out of them what's valuable to you, but understand there is a huge amount of implementation and work that goes after you come out of the class. 2, it's not a formula. There's no cookie cutters here, right? So like what works for you is going to be different than what works for like even the teacher that you took the class from, right? There's a lot of work, but pursue your dream. Absolutely. Just do it with like out rose-colored glasses. Like, understand this is work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And don't be embarrassed to have another job.
Absolutely not.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Do not be embarrassed by that. Like, I know people don't want to say it, but most of us do have other jobs.
Yeah.
That's just the facts. And, that's okay. Don't feel bad.
Yeah. There's no shame in that at all. You're paying your bills, and, kudos to you.
I still work as a tech consultant 9 to 5 every day of the week. In fact, when we get off here, I got a meeting.
Thank you for taking a break.
So I did say so we're going to start with our guests. I want to start doing hot seat questions. So there are 5 of them. They're super easy and hopefully just fun. So Stacie, what is your favorite color?
Orange.
Orange, why?
I just feel like it's cheerful, and every time I see something orange, it makes me happy.
Works for me. That's awesome.
I love that.
Dogs or cats?
Rabbits.
Oh, yay!
I love
all animals. Like, I love dogs and cats, but I had rabbits up until last year. They both passed away, but yeah, I had them for 10 years, and they were my kids' rabbits, but like they ended up being mine, and like I just fell in love with them, and yeah. So I think I'm probably gonna get a dog next because my boyfriend wants a dog, and you know, he's a dog person, but we'll see. I'm enjoying not having any pet care right now. So.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah,
Nice.
people think rabbits are easy. They are not. It's like more work than a dog, I think. They are messy and oh my God. Yeah.
But adorable.
Yeah.
Your go-to drawing software.
I honestly, I mean, I like Procreate, but I do everything by hand. I scan it and I do alter it in Photoshop. That's sort of my go-to, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely valid. That's you know, I don't think we get enough.
I'm an analog person. Like I like to put my hands on it, and then I'll take it into the computer and fix it up.
I love that. Your favorite movie?
Oh my gosh, I have two. I think there's one. It's called Once. It's about I think there was actually a Broadway show made about it too, but it's just a beautiful love story, and it like makes me cry every time. And I like Braveheart.
I love Braveheart. No, that's totally okay.
For many years, that was my favorite movie, and like I still love it. I don't know. There's something about it that I just yeah, I love it.
I love that too. All right, last one. What is your go-to song? The one you play when you need a pick-me-up?
I have a lot of them. Like I grew up in the 80s, and like I was very into like, you know, the hair band.
Yeah,
like Guns N' Roses, like Appetite for Destruction, my favorite album ever. Like, and sometimes I will, like when I'm really stressed out, I will put on Welcome to the Jungle just because I love that intro, and it just pumps me up to like get going.
So, I love that. That's
awesome.
So, yeah.
So, and that's a good tip too.
That is
try that
too.
sometime.
If you want newer, I actually really like all the Maggie Rogers songs. I like her new one. It's called The Kill. I love that song. I put that on a lot. Yeah. So
Carrie, we should start asking our guests. Stacie, let me know if you're even down for this. Like give us like a 3-song playlist that we can put in the show notes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well I'm definitely gonna say The Kill by Maggie Rogers. That's a great tune. I really like Welcome to the Jungle just because that intro is like, it's the most like, I don't even know how to describe it. It just makes me want to get up and do something, you know?
You guys, it also fits our theme for this podcast.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Welcome.
Absolutely. Welcome.
Exactly. We're here. Come on in. It's a jungle.
Oh my gosh. And then I mean, I like so many different genres of music. Like I liked alternative in the 80s, and I had a short stint where I liked a little bit of country. That kind of faded. Oh my gosh. I need another one. I also like some of the Chappell Roan songs that are out now. She was just on Saturday Night Live last week. Pink Pony Club.
Oh, nice.
That's a fun song. I just like it. It's fun. I'll put it on like when I'm working out and stuff. It's just one of those, you know, those good ones. Yeah. But there's thousands of songs I could say. I'm also like really into like 70s easy listening music. I put that on a lot when I'm drawing. Like
like yacht rock?
What is it?
Like yacht rock?
Yeah, yacht rock.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Oh yeah. Lots of yacht rock on my playlist.
About it that I love.
Cool. Well, Stacie, thank you so much for joining us. Tell everybody how they can find you on the interwebs.
Sure. You can go to surfacedesignnews.com. You can go there and find me. You can also go to staciedaledesigns.com, which is my retail site. And then my art practice is staciedaleillustrations.com. So any of those places you can find me. Instagram, same thing at Surface Design News. For my personal art one, it's Stacie with an IE _Dale_designs. And yeah, that's probably the best place to contact me.
Awesome.
Email me. I'm always up to answer questions.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking your time for us.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Stacie.
That's fun. Well, thank you. I really enjoyed. You guys are awesome.
So are you.
How are you? If you're loving this podcast, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, we'd love it if you could rate and review us. Your support helps more people discover the show and it keeps us going strong. Thanks for tuning in. It means a lot. I'm Toni.
And I'm Carrie. It's okay to be cranky.
In the meantime, keep creating.